In all of my dreams I am longing once more to be back in your arms on the old river shore. I'm so sad and weary. In all of my dreams away from home I am longing. I miss the Guadalupe to be back in your arms on the old river shore. I'm so sad and weary. In all of my dreams away from home I am longing. I miss the Guadalupe to be back in your arms on the old river shore. I'm so sad and weary. In all of my dreams away from home I am longing. I miss the Guadalupe to be back in your arms on the old. I'm growing tired of the big city lights, tired of the glamour and tired of the sights. In all of my dreams I am longing once more to be back in your arms on the old river shore. And tired of the sights. I'm so sad and weary. In all of my dreams away from home I am longing. I miss the Guadalupe to be back in your arms. Dear, days are dark and dreary. I'm so sad everywhere I roam. In all of my dreams I miss the Guadalupe. I miss the Guadalupe. Roaming this wide world over and weary. Always alone and blue, so blue. Nothing seems to cheer me. As wonder heaven's door, I miss the Guadalupe. Always alone and blue, so blue. Nothing seems to cheer me. As wonder heaven's door, I miss the Guadalupe. Memories are ringing, happy days of yore. I miss the Guadalupe and you, dear. Mockingbirds are singing round my cabin door. I miss the Guadalupe and you. Roaming this wide world over, always alone and blue, so blue, longing for my
Hello again, friends and family. Let's try this again, unmuted. Sorry about that. I had to learn a new technology to pull this off today, but I wanted to thank you so much for being here. Hopefully you can hear me now. Dear friends, family, and the incredible professional network that meant so much to my dad, Pat. Speaking from the heart, it's so good to be here with you today together in real time to celebrate the life of Pat Wertheim. I'm Katrina, his daughter, and it's an absolute honor to stand here and share this moment with you. His son Carrie is also here, tuning in from Connecticut with his family. And while his other son Casey can't be here with us today, Casey's family is all with us virtually. My two kids are here as well. They'll make an appearance in a second. We know that Dad and Casey are smiling down at us from heaven, thankful for all that you mean to the Wertheim family. So we're going to start off with a little bit of housekeeping. Just to let you know, you aren't on camera. I had to pick a technology where we could stream, and so I didn't want to put any pressure on you guys for being on camera. However, you do have the option to participate in the chat if you would like. So you are welcome to do that. You just have to sign in on Google. So if you take a minute, if you take a break and go sign in on Google and then come back to the live stream, you can move around in the live stream. You might be a minute or two behind. But if you want to participate in the chat, please make sure you're logged into Google. Also, please know that there's a human element to this. I've never done this live stream technology before. And I'm also talking about things that are so close to my heart and sensitive and raw. So I might have to take a break here or there. So you might see an intermission graphic come on screen. That's just me collecting myself. So with that said, let's continue. So his grandkids are here now. This is Jesse. These are just two of his many wonderful, beautiful grandkids. This is Jesse, and this is Eli. The camera's right there. And they're wearing Pat's Hawaiian shirts that were his when he was younger and much more spry, and he could fit them. So they loved their grandpa dearly, and they're here today to celebrate with us. Thank you, guys. All right, so this is not your average memorial, and that's exactly how my dad would have wanted it. This is a celebration. In fact, he had spoken of having a party while he was still alive in the form of a roast. Today, however, we're going to skip the formal roast. Dad's not here to defend himself, but I'll be sharing enough family bloopers to give us all a chuckle, and his professional network will share stories from that side of his life. Today, we're going to honor Pat Wertheim as a father, a friend, an unforgettable force of nature. And he was just some old jerk from Texas, as he loved to call himself. Pat was an open book and a renegade. He was direct but kind. He was calculated but compassionate. He was stoic, yet he was full of fire. As strong and fierce as a high mountain grizzly and somehow softer than a teddy bear. He was an anomaly through and through, and he was a one-of-a-kind gift to this world, who left it better than he found it. He touched more lives than anyone will ever be able to count, not just in his living, but in the legacy that he leaves that will carry on through the high precedents that he set. He raised some kick-ass kids. He got to see his even cooler kick-ass grandkids come into the world, yet the coolest one of all is his daughter. Don't worry, it's in the Wertheim nature to jockey of being Pat's favorite. Carrie and I still duke it out, and clearly I'm winning. Aren't I, Carrie? Dad's reach ran far and wide as he dedicated himself to teaching and mentoring thousands of forensic scientists, leading the way of integrity, confidence, humility, and never abusing power. He helped free innocent people trapped by systems larger than themselves. To the world, he was a pillar of truth and justice. And to Casey, Carrie, and me, he was Dad. He was a loving grandpa to Chrissy, Kira, Alex, Emily, Maynard, Josie, Jesse, and Eli. He loved them with his whole heart, and his sweetie, Bobby. If we're going to do him justice today, we're going to start with a disclaimer. This celebration includes everything Dad loved. Cussing, shenanigans, vulgarity, drinking, raising our glasses to Pat, and of course, flipping the bird. He loved flipping the bird, and we would send bird of the day pictures back and forth on text. In today's celebration, if you don't feel comfortable flipping the bird, choose another finger. He'll love you anyways. So with that, let's jump in. Let's have some fun and make Dad proud. I'd love to share some photos of his younger years as a fat cherub, his adorable years as a toddler, his teen years as a strapping and dapper fella, and the years he spent raising a family of his. Please enjoy this 4-minute tribute down memory lane back to his early years. But before we go there, cheers to Pat and the bird of the day.
Tell me about the good old days. Sometimes it feels like this world's gone crazy. And Grandpa, take me back to yesterday, when the line between right and wrong didn't seem so hazy. Lovers really fall in love to stay, stand beside each other, come what may. A promise really something people kept, not just something they would say. Families really bow their heads to pray, daddies never really go away. Oh, Grandpa, tell me about the Grandpa, everything is changing fast. We call it progress, but I just don't know. So Grandpa and Grandma, let's wander back into the past. Everything is changing and paint me a picture. We call it progress of long ago, but I just don't. Lovers really fall, so Grandpa to stand beside each other, into the come what may. A promise really something we call, not just something they would say. And then forget, families really bow, heads to pray. Daddies never really go away. Oh, Grandpa really something something they would say. And then for families really bow, tell me about the daddies never really go away. Oh, Grandpa, please tell me about not just something they would say. And then for families really bow, tell me about the daddies never really. If I could save time in a bottle, the first thing that I'd want to do is save every day till eternity passes away, just to spend them with you. If I could save time, if I could make days last forever, if words could make wishes come true, I'd save every day like a treasure, and then again I would spend them with you. But there never seems to be enough time to do the things you want to do once you find them. I've looked around enough to know that you're the one I want to go through time with. If I had a box just for wishes and dreams that had never come true, the box would be empty except for the memory of how they were answered by you. But there never seems to be enough time to do the things you want to do once you find them. I've looked around enough to know that you're the one I want to go through time with.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed that little visit back in time to see what Dad's life was like as a kid. He was an awesome guy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what his childhood was like, and then I'm going to share how we got into his forensics and what the next chapter of his life was like. Pat was born a cute, fat cherub with curly brown hair. He grew up barefoot in a German community with loving parents, Alex and Lois Wertheim. He had some pretty awesome siblings, Franny, Paul, and Debbie. Paul and Debbie are here with us today. Love you guys. They're awesome people to have in my life, a great aunt and uncle. Dad's early years shaped so much of who he was. The mischief, the grit, the independence, the adventure, and the big heart of his. He spent his time fishing, adventuring, going deep into caves to look for million-year-old fossils. He was all in. There's even a fossil named after him, one that he discovered in the lower Cretaceous Glen Rose limestone. It's classified as a Jurassic and Cretaceous crinoid, estimated to be 2 million years old. We have his fossil right here behind us. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's pretty neat to have something like that in the family, knowing that Dad found that. Dad married his childhood sweetheart, Bonnie, and they started a family. They adventured around the West, living in Texas, Arizona, and later Oregon. By education, Pat was a geophysicist, but he went from the oil fields to his family's German bakery, where he would give free donuts to the local law enforcement officers. He became quick friends with all the cops of Kerrville, Texas, which marks the beginning of what would turn out to be a groundbreaking career in forensic science. It turns out the free donuts made him popular with the cops, and they encouraged him to give police work a try. So starting out as a traffic cop, he quickly worked his way into leadership roles. He moved the family from Texas to Arizona to work at the Arizona Department of Safety Crime Lab. He started diving deeper into fingerprints. A previous assignment from a boss at an unnamed police agency in Texas, my dad had been asked to prepare a false identification from a specific crime scene in order to find a suspect guilty. My dad was horrified at the lack of ethics and honesty in this, and it lit a fire in him. That led to his 50-year career in which he passionately fought against the hidden systems and governments that abused power, leveraged falsified evidence to try to convict innocent people of crimes that they had not committed. Pat could be funny, serious, and everything in between. And I'm going to share some of those moments. You'll see the full spectrum of my dad. I'm going to start you guys off with a keynote that he had done in the UK that truly captures his essence. He had written a song for the audience about ridgeology that day. Then I'm going to move on and share a lovely tribute from the Van der Vyver family in South Africa. Hi guys, I'm glad you're here. I see you on the chat and I'm really grateful that you're here. Pat had introduced me to Louis and Corrine Van der Vyver after he had worked heavily on the case to help get Fred out of the clutches of the government. And Louis and Corrine took time out of their lives to treat me to the most incredible time in Kruger National Park in South Africa on Dad's recommendation. So we got to experience safari and a braai each night, seeing all the amazing African wildlife. On other visits I've done to South Africa, Alphonse has come out to visit, and he introduced me to rugby, which I now actually love way more than any American football. Don't tell anyone in the US. But we did a game drive and saw elephants, so it's amazing that through my dad's extensive life, he's brought the people that meant so much to him into our family. So thank you, Van der Vyvers, too. All right, so with that, I'm going to play a couple of videos for you guys that you'll enjoy.
Thank you, Stephen. It is indeed an honor to be here. When Morris approached me last year at the Fingerprint Society lectures, I was flattered and humbled that he thought that I would have anything worthy to present, and I want to do that. Morris told me he wanted me to come and do my usual song and dance, and of course Stephen has just made reference to entertaining. This morning I sat down and penned a few lines of the song, so trying to include something of the history of the Met and the period of transition in which we find ourselves now. We'd count 16 points and we'd catch a crook. We did it so proper and we went by the book. When along come a Mountie, taught us all a new way. So we changed the old standard, it's a brand new day. Well, I was born one morning in the drizzle and rain. After 10 years in the business, doing things all the same. When I read Dave Ashbaugh and I saw the light, so I changed my ways. Now I'm doing things right. We count 16 points and we catch a crook. We did it so proper and we went by the book. When along come a Mountie, taught us all a new way. So we changed the old standard, it's a brand new day. Well, if the sweat pores ain't there, then you better pay heed. Edgeoscopy too, 'cause all these things you'll need if you're gonna stick around for your whole career. These words I'm saying you had better hear. You count 16 points and we'd catch a crook. We did it so proper and we went by the book. When along came a Mountie, taught us all a new way. So we changed the old standard, it's a brand new day. So don't be like the dinosaurs and just count points. You may send some innocent folks to the joints, or you may miss the big one, let a killer go free, all because you refuse to use ridgeology. We count 16 points and we catch a crook. We did it so proper and we went by the book. Oh, thank you. Yes, the old song and dance. I tell you, the theme of this conference has centered around history. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. He was headed into
from Boston in a big long diesel truck. Was his first trip to Boston, he was having lots of luck. He was going the wrong direction down a one-way street in town. This is what he said when the police chased him down. Give me 40 acres and I'll turn this rig around. It's the easiest way that I've found. Some guys can turn it on a dime or turn it right downtown, but I need 40 acres to turn this rig around. When he finally found where to unload, he had a dreadful shock. His trailer's pointed towards the road, his cab right to the dock. And as he looked around him through his tears, he made this sound. Give me 40 acres and I'll turn this rig around. Give me 40 acres and I'll turn this rig around. It's the easiest way that I've found. Some guys can turn it on a dime or turn it right downtown, but I need 40 acres to turn this rig around. Finally got unloaded, he was glad to leave that town. He was very, very happy going back to Alabama. When up ahead he saw a sign, said you are northward bound. He said give me 40 acres and I'll turn this rig around. Give me 40 acres and I'll turn this rig around. It's the easiest way that I've found. Some guys can turn it on a dime or turn it right downtown, but I need 40 acres to turn this rig around. He was driving down the right lane when ahead he saw a sign, and he had to make a left turn, but he could not get in line. And the tears were streaming down his cheek when they all heard him yell, give me 40 sticks of dynamite and I'll blow this thing to... Give me 40 acres and I'll turn this rig around. It's the easiest way that I've found. Some guys can turn it on a dime or turn it right downtown, but I need 40 acres to turn this rig around. Put another log on the fire and cook me up some bacon and some beans, and go out to the car and change the tire. Wash my socks and sew my old blue jeans. Come on, baby, you can fill my pipe and then go fetch my slippers. Pour me up another pot of tea, then put another log on the fire. Babe, come and tell me why you're leaving me. Now don't I let you wash the car on Sunday? Don't I warn you when you're getting fat? Ain't I gonna take you fishing someday? Well, a man can't love a woman more than that. And ain't I always nice to your kid sister? Don't I take her driving every night? So sit here at my feet, 'cause I like you when you're sweet, and you know that it ain't feminine to fight. And put another log on the fire, cook me up some bacon and some beans, go out to the car and lift it up and change the tire.
Dear family members, friends, colleagues, and admirers of Pat, I'm honored that Katrina asked me to share some personal reflections with you at this, Pat's celebration of life. The first time that I met Pat, he was in one of his happy places. There he stood in front of a class full of latent print examiners who were looking to him for help in becoming better at what they did. It was 1997, we were in Arizona, and unbeknownst to the class, Pat was in the second year of his battle with what he would later call that damned cancer. Pat's passion for teaching and mentoring was evident immediately. Following some informative and very Pat-like animated lecture time, he put us all to work applying his techniques. Box after box of comparison materials sat in the classroom. We each received a packet to start working on. As they were completed, each of us would take them to him for grading. The reward that Pat presented for having no errors was yet another packet so you could start all over again. This went on day after day. Obviously, Pat favored the gospel accounting of the loaves and the fishes, as he always had another packet waiting to be handed out. Damn, Pat, how many of those did you have? In reflection, it was obvious that he loved every minute of it. After class, several of us got together outside of the hotel. Pat showed up carrying his guitar. I expected that we were going to have a sing-along, but was surprised when he entertained us with his own original fingerprint-themed songs. That also turned out to be the one time that Pat misled me. You see, the temperature was exceeding 100 degrees. Eggs were probably being fried on some nearby sidewalk, but Pat said it wasn't bad because it was a dry heat. Malarkey, it was frigging miserable, Pat. Thank you. Pat's dedication to enhancing the careers of forensic examiners through his classes and lectures was truly noteworthy. It is through that he has, and as part of his legacy, will continue to support an untold number of investigations worldwide. I went on to join Pat as a member of a forensic working group known as SweetFast. While dress for our meetings was casual, I don't recall a time when Pat didn't show up wearing a button-up shirt and necktie, which most often symbolized his beloved Texas. There was one mannerism of Pat's that I took particular note of. During our discussions, he would oftentimes lean in towards whomever was talking, staring and listening intently. And I clearly recall times when he would raise his finger towards them saying, "Oh yeah, right," and then, as he went on to state his personal support or suggested additions. His attentiveness and insightful contributions were always appreciated. Something that I believe few people are aware of is that fairly recently, and so far as I know, with him having no indication that his time amongst us was to be so short, Pat had expressed an interest in sponsoring his own celebration of life. What was different in his plan was that he wanted to have it while he was still alive. His desire was to have a party and enjoy it along with all of us. Sadly, there was another plan in the works that I believe surprised Pat as much as all of us. Through any number of paths, a handful of individuals rise to the level of being an icon within their profession. Pat was one for latent print examiners. He became known for his training, his participation in professional organizations, his involvement in unique and high-profile cases, and even for those original songs. Through a couple of private discussions I had with Pat, I know that professionally he was most proud of having his son, Casey, follow in his footsteps and make his own mark on the profession. As he commented to me, Casey knows everything. In closing, please allow me to state my personal and heartfelt thank you to Pat for being my teacher, my colleague, my supporter, my entertainer, and most importantly, my friend. Rest in peace, Pat.
Pat Wertheim touched countless lives throughout his remarkable career, and I'm honored to have been among them. Pat consistently championed accuracy in forensic science and the importance of clearly communicating its meaning to peers, officers, juries, attorneys, and judges alike. In doing so, he paved the way for the ethical application of forensic science in the justice system. One piece of advice from Pat stayed with me throughout my entire career. Speaking about the ups and downs of forensic lab work, he said, "It's like a pendulum. Some years it swings one way, but eventually, and it always does, it swings back." That wisdom reminded me of the value of steady, competent effort, no matter the circumstances. Thank you, Pat, for your mentorship, your friendship, and your unwavering commitment to doing what's right.
My name is Dusty Clark. I'm here to celebrate the life of Pat Wertheim, my best friend for 39 years. We met in 1986 at the FBI Academy for a 3-week course on the Advanced Administrative Latent Fingerprints. And we met several times during state and national international conferences of the International Association for Identification. As well, when he was teaching, traveling in his old station wagon throughout the states, I would host him at my house where we would sit in the hot tub drinking drams of scotch and wondering about the mysteries of life while we were looking at the stars. In 1999, I joined the SWIGFAST Scientific Working Group for Fingerprint Identification Standards, and during that time, we both served on the same Latent Print Standardization Committee for Identification. During that 15 years, we would have numerous arguments, severely heated arguments in that committee, both between me and Pat and others. Much yelling, sometimes screaming, but at the end, we all agreed to disagree for several years. Then in 2014, when I left SWIGFAST, we had just completed the standardization for latent print identification that was adopted. It was a great pleasure to serve with Pat and his friendship during these years, and everyone as well as I will sorely miss his presence. Love you, Pat. Best wishes in the afterlife. God bless.
Hi, everybody. I'm so incredibly honored to be here to share with you some stories about Pat Wertheim, how I got to know him, and the impact that he made in my life. My name is Rochelle Babler. I'm a former latent print examiner with San Diego Police Department, and I'm just going to share with you some stories and how I got to know Pat and how he impacted my life. So I got into forensics around 1997 when I had been a paramedic for 6 years. Contract negotiations were coming up, and many of us were going to lose our jobs and not get carried over to the next contract. So I took a forensics course, got hooked, and that started almost a 20-year career in forensics. And when I got picked up with an agency, a small agency in San Diego, I started taking classes. And through that, I kept hearing, oh, you got to take this class. And the same class kept getting mentioned over and over, and that was Pat's radiology class. And so I kept hearing about this man, the myth, the legend. And when I went to San Diego PD, that was the first class that they sent me to. So in 2000, I was sent to Santa Barbara to take Pat's class, and I took that class with Glenn Langenberg. We were both new examiners at that time, and other people as well. And that was the first time I really got to know Pat. And a funny story about that was at San Diego PD, some people had what was called a slant board, where it was this vertical board where you could clip your latent print and your inked next to each other and do your examination sitting upright instead of hunched over at your desk, killing your neck. And so I decided to take my slant board to Santa Barbara, and I really didn't think it was a big deal. I was like, I don't want to do hundreds of comparisons and kill myself that week. So I took my slant board, and I remember the first day of class, I got there early, and I'm setting up my thing and setting up my stuff. And Pat's just like, you know how he stands with his arms on his hips, and you've all seen this before. And he's looking at, and his head's tilted, and he's looking at me, and he's like, what the fuck is this girl doing? And I set my thing up, and I remember the end of the week, he's like, you've got some big balls. Set that thing up in class, just come in here. And he was just kind of impressed by it, and I just thought it was so funny. But during that class, a part of his lecture was on the fabrication of latent prints. And I was from San Diego PD, and he talked about this case, Herman Wiggins' case, that it was the largest fabricated case to date that he knew of. And he said, if you have a chance, you should look into this case. And it intrigued my, curiosity, and it made me want to look into it more for some reason. But I think the reason is, and many of you will resonate with this, is that Pat had a very He was a very brilliant instructor, and he had a very unique way of weaving forensic science, data, information, teaching into storytelling. And he was so good at it. And it just captivated everybody. Whether it was a forensic lecture or his class, he had everybody's attention. There was nobody sleeping in his class. He just knew how to really keep people engaged. And I think that's what really kind of inspired me to, look into this. I was very intrigued by it. And after that class, we kept in touch. I would meet him whenever I could. And that really catapulted my expansion of my career and doing research and starting to lecture at forensic conferences and teaching. That turned into a 4-hour workshop and then an 8-hour workshop, and then taking that rodeo all over the country, lecturing at forensic conferences and at law enforcement agencies. And when I started expanding and teaching was when Pat started slowing down and not teaching as much on the road, and he was working more at a lab. And he was just always there for me, always there to talk to me anytime I needed to. He encouraged me. He was my biggest cheerleader. He was my fingerprint dad. He, after a time, it became more than a mentor. He became more than a mentor. He was a friend, not only a dear friend, but he really became family. And he was my FPD, my fingerprint dad. He called me his fingerprint daughter. I know Alice White's his fingerprint daughter as well. And he was just so incredibly, he was just a huge part of my life. And you all know that he was diagnosed with cancer many years ago. And one story that I have about him that's a little funny is he asked me to go down to TJ, which is right south of the border of San Diego, and go pick up some supplements for him that he was taking for when he had his cancer and was doing juicing and taking supplements. And I said, yeah, I'll go down there for you, just whatever you need. As long as it's legal and I don't get thrown in jail, I'm down with it. So I went across the border with my supervisor, and he and I went down there, got the stuff that he needed, came across the border, and everything was fine. And then I went down there a second time, and the second time I went down, I went with someone who worked in the crime scene unit, and her husband was an attorney in Mexico. And I thought, okay, if the shit hits the fan, at least I'm with somebody who knows someone in TJ. And her and I went down there, we're coming across the border, and this border patrol agent just started really giving us a hard time and questioning us, looking at our license plate, and just really made us nervous. And I thought, oh fuck, something's gonna happen. And he wanted to pop the trunk, looked at the meds, the pills, and, would go back to his little booth and look at the computer, look at our license plate. And he came out and he was doing these, I know, I see you too. I know your faces. I don't want you guys, coming down here and bringing these back. These aren't, just all this talk. Well, he let us go through. And when we got to the other side, my poor friend, she looked mortified. And I was like, I am so sorry. And I called Pat. I'm like, Pat, what the fuck? And he's like, that guy doesn't know shit. This isn't illegal or anything. Obviously it wasn't, because he let us through. But my friend told me that underneath that box was her mock crime scene kit. And in that had this fake bloody knife and a fake gun and all these things. So had that guy seen it, we probably would have been pulled over, and things might have gotten kind of weird and ugly. So anyways, that was kind of a funny story, because I would get thrown in TJ for my fingerprint dad. TJ jail. But he really, became family to me. He was a big part of why, my career took the path it did. I 100% believe had I not done what I'd done, I wouldn't have been a part of SwigFest or OSAC or anything like that. I met, one thing Pat did when we talked a lot is I felt like I knew his family, his kids and his grandkids were, the love that he felt for his family just poured through his words and his sharing. And I got to meet Casey and have some fun times with him in SwigFest. But I felt like I knew the rest of his family just through him. He made an impact not only in my life, but in the lives of many forensic examiners all across the world. He was a well-known, well-respected person who I think one of the biggest things for me was always in the pursuit of truth, especially in injustices. And he inspired me to, share this niche topic that we talked about, the fabrication of blatant prints, with others for the integrity of, what it is that we do in law enforcement. So I miss him very much. He was a huge part of my life. Even after I quit forensics in 2017, we stayed in close touch. He was cheering me from the sidelines as I navigated this new life for myself. We talked a lot about music. If you took Pat's class, you would hear him. He'd break out his guitar and sing his fingerprint songs, but he actually wrote many, many, many other songs, and he was a brilliant songwriter, singer, guitar player, and I have a huge passion for music, as you can see, and we talked a lot about that. So I miss him very much. He made a huge impact again in my life and many others. I will miss his talks. I will miss his the fun times, the fun conversations that we had, very candid and open, and his funny emails and the shit that we'd say to each other. And he was somebody who made an impact for generations to come, especially in the forensic world. So I miss you. I love you so much, Pat. Thank you for everything that you did for me and for so many. And I look for the signs to see you. I love you.
Thank you so much for speaking from the heart. Rochelle, Lenny, and Stephen, the family really appreciates your thoughts and sharing your stories and sharing what Dad meant to you. A lot of these things I didn't know or I didn't hear. Growing up, I heard many, many stories. It's always fun to hear a new impact that he had on people's lives. And to echo what Rochelle said, hell yes, big balls is the way to go. I think he taught women, generally his mentors, the women in his life, he wanted us to be able to function in what at the time and in a lot of ways still is a man's world. And Dad did push for equality, and he taught me to have big balls too. So I appreciate, Rochelle, you sharing that. So hell yes, cheers to Dad. It's time for a bird of the day. So actually, to be celebratory, these were some of my father's favorite sunglasses that I would always wear to make him laugh. So I'd send him a bird of the day with the bird of the day sunglasses on. So cheers to Pat. I forgot to drink. I don't usually day drink. It's time to start. All right, I'm seeing some good birds coming in. All right, so with that said, I can't see with these on because they're not prescription for my old eyes. I inherited poor vision from my father. Thanks, Dad. All right, so we're gonna hear from Alice now. Alice is another one of his fingerprint daughters who has done amazing things with the training and mentorship that Pat had given her in her very early years. And all right, here comes Alice.
My name is Alice White. I met Pat Wertheim on April 27th, 1998. I know the exact date because it is on my training certificate. My agency at the time, the State of Alaska Crime Lab, sent me to 2 back-to-back courses taught by some guy named Pat Wertheim. And at the time, Pat was running the Forensic Identification Training Seminars, which was the training division of Lightning Powder Company. I was fresh out of training as a latent print examiner. This was my first training outside of my agency, and also the first time I'd ever been sent away to training. And the first course that I took from Pat was called Mastering Expert Testimony. And the second course I taught from him the next week was Advanced Radiology Comparison Techniques. And both these courses were being taught down in Mesa, Arizona. On the first day of the testimony class, Pat decided that we were going to do an icebreaker. And this icebreaker, what he wanted each attendee to do was to talk about a pet peeve that they had. And he handed each of us a foam bat, and he encouraged us, and he did it by example first, to yell and move around the room and kind of act like a fool and slam the bat on the tables or the desks to really sort of emphasize, what it was that bothered us. And it was like I'd signed up for an acting class, and I was like, holy moly, this guy is nuts. So one thing to keep in mind is, at the time I was in my mid-20s, and of course full of the natural good looks that comes with being young. And I was also full of a lot of moxie. And at that time, I'd been really frustrated because as, a young, attractive female, I could barely turn a corner at that point in my life without being hit on. So what I decided, since this was my first class away, the room was mostly men, and I just didn't want to deal with it, is that I walked around the room and I bopped each and every one of the guys in class on the head with the bat and described the experiences that led me to this pet peeve that I had, and proclaimed that if I was talking to them during class or after class and I was being nice, that it didn't mean that I wanted to sleep with them. So as I made my way around the classroom, suddenly I was face to face with Pat, and I completely lost my nerve and demurred at that point in time and set the bat down. Pat loved to tell that story, and he would just laugh and laugh and laugh. He thought it's the funniest thing ever. That story never got old for him. The following week, I attended his comparison class, and he had these packets set up with different levels of difficulty, and I was chewing through them pretty good, especially for, at that point, only a year of experience, and he was absolutely delighted. So, Pat started as my teacher for those first few years after we met, and that time may or may not, allegedly, include an incident at a hotel in Oregon where Casey and I had been working on a project while Pat and some other instructors were teaching a 2-week class. So because I was pregnant at the time and I wasn't drinking, Pat had decided that the best place to store the beer for those 2 weeks during the training class was in the bathtub of my hotel room, which was then promptly loaded with ice. And so every evening, someone would get sent in to unload the booze out of my tub and bring it out to the pool, where Pat would regale us with stories and pull out his guitar and sing for us. So it was allegedly these things happen. Anyway, so he morphed from being my teacher into being my mentor, and then becoming a very dear friend. And my journey is certainly not unique. That was Pat. If he saw a spark in you and you were willing to do the hard work, he would do anything within his power to help you along the way. There are many of us within the discipline that were propelled forward in our own careers by Pat's love and generosity. So I want to thank Pat's family, especially his children, and his loved ones for sharing him with me and with the latent print community. Pat made us better examiners, and in turn, we were better at serving our communities. And for our communities, places all over the globe. So all my love to you, Fingerprint Dad, and I know I couldn't have done it without you. So hold 'em high. and drink them dry.
Oops. Hold on. All right. That was amazing. Thank you, Alice. I appreciate everything you had to say about my father. Cheers to Pat. Coolest guy ever. Prost. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get used to this day drinking thing. All right. Anyways, so before we hop into some other things, I want to touch base real quick. So we're having some really awesome comments coming in, so I'm kind of moderating the chats too. Janet Cooper, thank you for chiming in, Janet, about he got skunked while you guys were fishing. So it sounds like Janet and Bobby caught all the fish and Dad got skunked. So Pat gifted a really amazing saltwater fishing pole to his granddaughter, Jessie. She's going to bring in her fishing pole and show it. Here she comes. Be prepared for a very large object. Eli, can you help Jessie? It's so big it barely fits into the room. So here she comes. She looks like she's pole vaulting. Okay, please bear with us. Okay, so Pat was an avid lover of going fishing, and he didn't always catch, as indicated by Janet. Thank you for sharing that. But he loved being on the water, and I was with him many a time when we caught fish. He would take us camping in Colorado, and we would catch rainbow trout, and he would fillet them up, and that's what we would have for dinner at night. And so Jessie is showing us this really amazing, it won't even, like it's, thank goodness we have tall ceilings. Anyways, he would visit us here in Maine and take the kids fishing, and so that was a big part of his life. I'm just looking back through some of these wonderful notes. Thank you guys. Aw, Kathleen says that everyone was Pat's best friend, and I'd have to say that's really quite true. Once you got into Pat's heart, which really didn't take much, I guess, because he loved everyone. Once you got into his heart, you were so special to him. And so today I'm wearing my fingerprint necklace that he made. Jessie, are you wearing yours? So Pat made gold necklaces with his fingerprint on them for the super special people in his life, and so we're wearing those today in his honor. I want to show you something else that meant so much to Pat. He was an avid rock hound all of his life, and we have a specimen collection that he had collected when he was a kiddo. So Eli, go right, the camera's right there. Step a little closer. Can you hold it closer? Okay, so this is a mini collection of specimens that he had won in, let's see what the date is, 1964. Pat got first place at the junior division Cabochon show. So that was another neat part of Pat's life. If you had ever spent time around him, I'm sure he shared stories about his rock hounding days. All right, so let's see, we're gonna move forward. And I am going to share some words by a very special person to my dad. Pat loved this woman as a friend and colleague for many years, and it wasn't until later in my life that he introduced us. So these are some words from Kathleen Birnbaum, who was incredibly special to my family, my father, and myself. And in fact, when Dad and I would visit Arizona, which was quite frequently, Kathleen and Stephen would welcome us into their home, and she really treated my father like a brother. And so I'm going to share her words. It means so much to us. Kathleen says, "It was about 35 years ago that Pat took me under his wing and mentored me in fingerprints. Initially, he was my verifier on casework while I worked at the Sheriff's Department just down the road from where Pat worked at the Department of Public Safety. As years went by, we became the best of friends, then colleagues on cases once we both retired from our respective agencies. I inherited his famous class of comparisons, and I expanded it with his encouragement, following closely in his footsteps, more than I ever could have imagined. We even began calling each other Pard and Pardette. He often stayed in our guest house when visiting Tucson, and I will always remember our long talks on the back patio, sipping scotch, watching the sunset. Pard became such a part of me and my life to ever be forgotten. I will always owe him so much. With love, Kathleen. Cheers to Kathleen. Cheers to Pat. Thank you so much, Kathleen. You are such a blessing and a gift in my life, too. All right. Next up, we are going to share some words from the IAI, so the International Association for Identification. My dad has been involved with the IAI for many years. He is a lifetime member. He held leadership roles, and our family, my brothers and I, hold the IAI dear to our hearts, special to us, and I'll share a little bit more about that in a minute because it involves shenanigans. So let me get through the really kind words and wonderful tribute sent from the IAI regarding my father, Pat. The IAI is the world's oldest and largest forensic association in the world. We represent 7,000 forensic professionals across 77 countries. Today, in the field of forensic identification, today, the IAI joined hands to celebrate the life, achievements, and contributions of Pat Wertheim, a giant in the field of forensic identification and a man who has impacted an entire generation of forensic practitioners through his leadership, mentorship, and expertise. News of Pat's passing was heard around the world, and he leaves a legacy that will have a lasting impact on the entire forensic science community. Pat began his journey in law enforcement in 1973. Please hold. He served as a police officer, a detective, sergeant, and training officer, but it was the field of fingerprint examination where he found his true calling. From 1986 onward, Pat devoted himself entirely to the science of latent prints, building a reputation as one of the most respected experts in the field. Throughout his remarkable 5-decade career, Pat worked with agencies across the country and beyond, spanning local, state, and federal agencies throughout the United States. His expertise became a trusted source, not just in the U.S., but internationally, as he contributed to complex forensic cases and helped shape global best practices. Pat was a brilliant examiner and a passionate educator. He taught courses in latent print comparison and courtroom testimony in 25 states across the globe, from the UK and Netherlands to Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands. His teachings empowered countless forensic professionals, raising the standards of the entire discipline. He was also a force for justice. Pat played a critical role in major cases where he exposed errors and even fabricated evidence, cases having international significance, such as Shirley McKee and Fred Vanderwever. His work didn't just impact individual lives, it shaped policy and practice in the forensic science world. Even in retirement, he couldn't stay away from his passion. He shared it with others in the classroom. His enduring commitment to the next generation of examiners reflected his belief that knowledge, once earned, must be shared. Pat was more than a forensic expert. He was a mentor, trailblazer, and above all, a man of principle and compassion. His life's work made communities safer, advancing the cause of justice, and inspired everyone who had the privilege of knowing him. Thousands of members from the IAI around the globe honor his memory today with gratitude for all he gave, and with the certainty that his legacy will live on in the many lives he touched. Thank you so much. We appreciate the words, and thank you so much to Jan LeMay for sharing this with us. So the Wertheim family has appreciated the IAI conference, or the IAI for many years, and the camaraderie of Pat and Casey when Casey stepped into forensics was a really neat thing to watch. So from my perspective, and I'm sure I can speak for my brother Carrie as well, and Casey, who's smiling down at us from heaven, probably will also enjoy this story. So I would always look forward to, and my brothers and I together looked forward to IAI conferences, because Dad would always put us with Mom in the family track, and we would get to do all the fun activities during the day, and then in the evenings, and a lot of times even during the day between my dad was speaking, we'd get bored and we'd sneak off to the elevator, where we would push all the buttons on the elevator, and we would see how high we could jump at each floor. When the elevator would stop, we would spring into the air. I'm sure you're all familiar with this, right? Hopefully. So, because the IAI was always held at large conferences, at large hotels and conference centers, there was always a really great elevator with a lot of stops. And so when Dad would say we were going to the IAI conference, or any of the divisions, TDIAI always had some good ones too, we would just get so excited about the elevator. So no doubt while we were mastering our high jumps, the speakers and the keynotes and the attendees were all late to their sessions due to this mysterious delay in the elevators. Am I right, Carrie? Am I right? I think I'm right. All right, next up, I'm going to share a really special note from the McKee family. So Dad worked really closely with the McKee family to help prove Shirley's innocence against the clutches of the government corruption in Scotland, and it's one of the most controversial cases to date globally. And the McKees sent a very special note for us to read today. So I'm going to share this with you. The celebration of Pat Wertheim from the McKee family. It was on a cold, dark winter's afternoon in 1999 that Shirley McKee stood quietly at the edge of a sea near her home in Troon. A bitterly cold wind blew off the snow-covered peaks on the island of Arran, a few miles out to sea, but Shirley felt nothing as she contemplated her future. Once a highly rated detective, she was facing the ultimate nightmare for a police officer: prison. Shunned by her former boyfriend and police colleagues, bullied by senior police officers, the might of the Scottish prosecution system lined against her. 6 months away from trial for perjury at Glasgow High Court. It's at times like these, when all seemed in danger of being lost, that Pat Wertheim came into our lives. A witness at Shirley's trial for perjury in Glasgow High Court in May 1999, she was facing the might of the Scottish justice establishment and the arrogance of the Scottish Criminal Records Office fingerprint experts. In our book, Prince of Innocence, we outline the impact Pat had at Shirley's trial. Here's a clip from the book. The moment Pat Wertheim entered the witness box, his slow Texan drawl and confident, if somewhat theatrical manner, caught the attention of everyone in court number 3. He appeared to revel in the experience. In contrast with the halting, defensive approach of the SCRO, could not have been greater. Here was a master of his science who had trained experts throughout the world and who was more than able to lead the court through the complexities of fingerprinting. The American's evidence was a masterclass in fingerprint identification of a type that few Scottish courts had ever experienced. Bit by bit, he destroyed the SCRO evidence. Shirley, myself, and our whole family are honored to be able to join in the celebration of Pat's life and pay a tribute to a man who left an indelible mark on our lives that time will never dim. Pat was a warrior and a man of spirit and courage in adversity. He prepared to put his reputation and career on the line to achieve justice, often under the most difficult circumstances. When he was opposed by arrogant experts and serious threats against his career, he stood firm, bold, and brave, and in doing so won the day. Pat turned our family's despair into hope and eventually happiness. He's someone who is in our hearts forever. He became a true friend, and while we grieve his passing, we salute him as a truly special individual who put his career on the line to speak for Shirley and for our family. You will never be forgotten, Pat. A truly remarkable journey has ended, but the memories abide. Rest in peace. With love, from the McKee family. Cheers to the McKee family. Cheers to Shirley. Cheers to Pat. All right. Let's figure out where we are, guys. This is where I have to be a human for a second. Figure out my technology. All right. Are you guys sick of hearing me yet? I'm sorry if I'm just talking on and on, but we're truly celebrating Dad, and it's not a shallow well to dive into. So I want to thank, my entire family, all the Wertheims, want to thank everyone who's shared their stories and their thoughts and their photos and their condolences. I can't even tell you, from where we sit, what it was like losing not only my father, but my brother, Casey, losing the two of the Wertheim men. So I told my little brother, Carrie, if anything happens to him, I am gonna fucking kick his ass. So, sorry, there's that F-bomb, I promise. But so to have lost two of our guys at the same time has taken its toll. But, the support and the outpouring from all of you, I can't even tell you the hundreds upon hundreds of messages, cards, emails, notes on LinkedIn, notes on Facebook. I had people, if Stephanie's here today, I had people I've never even met that took a class with my father or met my father or even knew of my father, and people were sending me gift cards for DoorDash and so that we would have meals. And I can't even tell you what that's like when you have just lost what feels like, your pillars and your foundation, to have this whole community prop you up because of the love they had for Pat and Casey. So just a huge thank you from the bottom of the Wertheim family's hearts for all of that support. So I wanted to share a moment about Pat's son, Casey. So Casey and Dad were like two peas in a pod. They were both in two fingerprints. Casey had been mentored by Dad through the years. And we just kind of grew up the fiber of our lives. And Casey latched onto that, and he went on and got a degree and followed that path. And he took his path into biometrics, and he accomplished so much in his lifetime. He grew a massive amount of respect and credibility in his field. And in a very sad twist of fate, he passed away 6 days after Dad. So the really interesting thing about Pat died of heart failure, not cancer. Pat's heart failure was caused by the very clinical trial that he was participating in. After his 30-year battle with cancer, he was trying all the different methods to treat the cancer and try to battle it. But the great thing was, it was his very wish to help others with cancer while not dying of it. And so in the end, he actually got his wish, which is really neat. He always said instant heart failure was the way to go. And it's interesting that ended up panning out. So one of my dad's critical care nurses, one of his nurses, while he was at the cancer hospital, and I didn't get formal written permission to share names or places, but one of the nurses sent the most wonderful note, and I wanted to just read a little bit. It's pretty long, but I'm going to summarize what it was like, what Pat was like while he was going through the most intense, devastating types of treatments. My dad was such a bright light, and I'll share with you what one of the nurses said. "Your father was one of my favorite patients. Every time he came in, he had a smile on his face and a joke ready to share. One of his favorites was a joke that he and his daughter Trina had shared during one of his visits. We'd ask if he was in pain or if he felt sick, and Trina butted in, 'Only when he looks in the mirror.' They laughed until they cried, and now we make fun of that every time. We had so much fun with that. Despite undergoing cancer treatment, he had a positive attitude. He always made everyone else laugh and smile. He was genuinely interested in my life, even just as a nurse. He'd always come in and ask how I was doing. You could tell he meant it. Even when he wasn't feeling well, his concern for others, especially me, was evident. His perspective on cancer and life itself was inspiring. I've never met anyone else who could say they were glad to have cancer. When I first met him, I wasn't even sure I had heard him correctly. He'd fill out the standard questionnaire about pain and his quality of life, and he thought the whole thing was silly. He didn't have pain, he'd say, and he was not worried about dying. We would laugh every time I ran him through that questionnaire. One of the most important things was that he taught his children how to live, and as he put it, how to die. We talked about that nearly at every visit. He would often say, I've had the pleasure of teaching my kids how to live. Now it's time to teach them how to die. This was something he took great pride in, and it showed deep love and responsibility that he felt towards his family. This is just a brief glimpse, and it was an honor to be part of his journey. Thank you, unnamed nurse at the unnamed cancer facility, for sharing that beautiful note about Dad. And I can attest to that. It was almost embarrassing to the point where when we would go to the cancer hospital, I went with Dad on some of his treatments through the years, and he would show up celebratory, and he's like, am I the only one in here who's grateful to have cancer? And I'm like, Dad, shh, like, no one shares the sentiment. Like, wrong audience, Dad. But that was just his spirit. He was so grateful to still be alive. And that damn cancer, he fought with all his might, and in the end, it truly was him that won. So, all right. I want to take things back to Casey. So, in the strangest coincidence, Casey was also diagnosed with an incredibly aggressive form of renal cell carcinoma, kidney cancer, and he battled it for a few short months with everything he had. He held hope until at the very end. Casey's passing left a deep hole in all of our hearts, but it was Dad's worst nightmare to have to see him pass. And again, Dad got his wish, and the two of them are together again, no doubt, sharing a Shiner Bock or a Glenlivet 12-year single malt scotch. So let's all raise a glass and give the bird of the day to Pat and Casey. Cheers to the best of the best. Yeah, day drinking's not my thing. All right. So you guys have to listen to me talk a little bit more, but I'm going to share some. Now we're switching into the fun part. Like, this is going to be the silliness, we're going to kind of start the roast a little bit. We're not doing a formal roast, but we're going to talk about some of the lighter side of Pat. So because of that, I have two choices on hats. I'm not sure which one. So this black Stetson back here, Dad bought me when I was 16, and this one's closer, so we're gonna go with this for now. This is my dad loved cowboy hats. My dad loved hats. So this is a straw hat from Arizona. So let's talk about a few characteristics of Pat that inspired those around him. And I've collected some input from others, and I think everything kind of wove together in a really synergistic way. There are definitely common threads throughout. Pat lived with zest. He loved adventures. He loved storytelling. He was happy to be alive. He would say that pain and discomfort reminded him that he was alive and that he was beating the damn cancer. As his children, our whole lives, he would always tell us how proud of us he was. And one of my favorite things about my dad, and one that we still carry on in my family too, my kids and I, and my brothers and I, self-depreciation and constantly laughing at yourself and, not taking yourself too seriously was something that my dad instilled in us. And I also love to poke fun at my little brother Carrie all the time, as much as I can, because that's my hobby. So yeah, we had a lighthearted, bantery household, and it's been such a way to kind of heal and get through missing Dad. So when we were kids, people would ask us, what was it like to be the child of a forensic giant? I think what we would say is he's just a cowboy from Texas. He's just some jerk from Texas. That's one of his favorite things to say. But here are some of the shenanigans that were experienced by the Wertheim children when we would shadow my dad, or, being his children growing up. Starting in I guess we started in the 70s, and then Carrie came along in the 80s. But so I'll share something that was one of my first reality wake-up calls, realizing that I'm dealing with this bigger-than-life thing. So we were at an IAI conference. It might have been TDIAI or IAI, but it was in the early 80s, and my brothers and I took a break from the elevator game, and we decided to go to the expo floor with Dad. So I'm just milling about. I was early elementary school, walking around in the booths on the expo floor, and I walked into this booth and I thought it was modern art. It was so cool. There was all these really neat, modern art posters and photos, and I'm enjoying that, and I'm looking around, and I read a sign, and the sign says gunshot wounds to the head, and I'm like, oh shit. Well, I didn't say that because I still had manners then, but that was like, okay, this is intense. So I ran and found Dad and grabbed onto his leg and hid behind him for the rest of the week. Dad would also take us to the jail, and we would see him fingerprinting inmates. We would visit crime labs. We would see evidence and ask about it and see people processing evidence. We would watch him testify from time to time in court. Absolute bulldog, no fear. It was amazing. My brothers and my prints were all over his training materials. He used to collect plastics that he would, in class that he was teaching, he would have the students dust the variety of plastics. So we'd always joke that we were the world's most fingerprinted humans. So if any of y'all lifted my prints through the years, you got me. So we've been in and out of crime labs and firearm libraries and recovered evidence rooms. This was back in the 80s, so I'm sure protocol's different now. It's probably all on lockdown. So we spent a lot of time there, but we were never behind bars, not a single one of us. If we threw a party, we'd only use disposable cups. So in high school, Dad would say, fine, throw a party, but just don't get caught. Pat walked barefoot in the hill country of Texas amidst rattlesnakes and scorpions and cactus thorns. He'd catch the rattlesnakes by hand, and then he'd put them in the freezer at the crime lab. One time the janitor threw away his batch of frozen rattlesnakes, and I've never seen him so mad. Pat used to remove splinters from our fingers and toes with a pocket knife. He was very gentle, but it was just part of life. You got a splinter? Come here, kid. Dad would fill up milk jugs with water and let us blast them to smithereens with his collection of firearms. So, all of you forensic people, maybe your kids have stories about what it was like growing up as a child of a forensic scientist, but I don't know, those are some of the fun things that we got to do as kids because Dad was so badass. He loved taking his family on adventures up until the very end. One of the biggest memories and one of his favorite things to do when we were kids was when we lived in Arizona, he would set up camping cots on the deck of our pool, and we lived out in the desert kind of near the foothills of the mountains, and Tucson is a very dark place. It's a hub for astronomy, and so there's a lot of light restrictions, so the night sky is so dark and so beautiful. So Dad would set up our camping cots, and we'd all sleep out on the pool deck at night looking up at the stars, and he would always center it around cosmic events. So if there was going to be a comet, or if there was a special constellation in the night sky, anything going on, he knew. He kept tabs on all of it, and he would bring the kids outside and Bonnie, and we would all camp out there and enjoy the night sky. He loved to visit old ghost towns, caves, and mines. He would take us panning for gold. We fished and camped more than, probably anybody. I can't remember. I think it was Carrie and I were talking. No, it was actually Dad and I talking about it, I think. But recently we were calculating the number of nights we had spent camping in our life, and it was, if you calculated all that time, it was like in the years. So he really loved getting us outdoors, taking us four-wheel driving in the Bronco. We took road trips around the West as kids. He'd throw us in the Bronco or that beige station wagon that my parents loved to embarrass us with. Dad saved up, I remember one summer, $2,000, and he saved it up in his tin can, and that was what we had to live on for 2 weeks, moving around the West and camping. He had built a bunk bed in the back of the Bronco so that my brothers and I could lie on that bunk bed and see up and out the window as we would drive, and see stars, because we'd always drive overnight to get to our different adventures. Something about my dad, well, okay, so he was absolutely terrified of heights. I mean, petrified of heights. But he told us in later years he didn't want to pass that fear on to us. So I remember, I didn't even know he was afraid of heights until later in life. But one time we were at the Grand Canyon, and Casey and I, Carrie was little, so I don't think he went out on the pillars with us. But Casey and I wanted to go out on some of those big, the pillars, and I'm losing the name for it. But Dad was like, sure, go ahead. And so he let us go beyond the fence onto these big columns, and he was filming it on that old VHS camera that, you know, was like massive. He was filming us, and when we got back home, Dad would always play the photos and the slides, the movies of our adventures, and we were watching that video, and you can hear all the other tourists around my parents going, oh my God, look at those children, how dangerous, what kind of parents, you know. And it's like, my dad, he fully trusted us to trust ourselves, and that was one thing that has carried me personally through life. Like, just trust yourself, know your limits, do what you know you're capable of doing. That was a really unique gift he gave us. When Carrie was little, he was the cutest little thing, and he's 4 years younger than me, so we would go to adventure parks, and Carrie was never tall enough to ride the rides that the rest of us wanted to ride. So my dad would puff up his hat just a little bit. He'd put a hat, like a soft hat, and fluff it up just a little bit so Carrie could ride the rides. It's like he knew that we could do these things, and he wanted to make us capable of doing it. When I was in college, it was graduation day, and my dad was in Scotland testifying in the McKee trial, and he had told me, hey, sweetie, I'm not going to be able to be at your graduation. And I'm like, of course, Dad, I understand, 100%, you know. So I'm walking across the stage to graduate, and I look over, and there's Dad. He had surprised me. He flew it was a day trip. I mean, he hopped on a plane, flew all day, watched me cross the stage, and got right back on a plane to go back to the trial. I was so honored. There are photographs of me when I saw him in the audience. My mom snapped a picture, and I had the biggest surprise smile on my face, but he just wanted to make sure, you know, he was always in our corner. Later in life, you know, I'd say maybe in the last 4 or 5 years, he really started checking off bucket list items. He was really, really adamant about creating memories with his grandkids and his kids, and so he's like, okay, what are we going to do this summer? And we would do all kinds of trips together in the last few years, and he'd call it bucket list trips, and he would treat each one like it was the most special gift. So we'd go to our family reunions in the hill country of Texas. He and I went on a fishing trip to Port Aransas, and all of his grandkids would come at least, you know, in the summer, and we'd have a big fun family reunion all together. So one of the funniest things, this is sort of a roast style of Dad, when we would go for his cancer treatments, he loved cracking up the nurses and the doctors, and so there were a lot of hours spent in these hospitals, and we made it fun. But when someone would talk to him about his prostate cancer, he would love to say anything about the region in which his prostate cancer existed, and he would say, it's no big thing. So he was always making fun of himself and just having a good time with it and taking what life was giving him. let's see, what else should I say about Dad? God, I could go on forever. Some lessons he taught us in life: run around barefoot. Scars meant that you lived, and hurt meant that you loved. Always do the right thing and trust yourself. He always let us make our own choices as long as we trusted our gut and were willing to pay the natural consequences. So, some of Dad's funny quirks. Anyone who has a funny quirk about Dad, please feel free to share it in chat, because I would love to hear about some of his quirks from your side. My little brother, on the chat, I have to share this. This is what a little pain in the ass Carrie is. He says, that hat looks like something you'd wear to a dog fight. That's awesome. There's so many great chats coming in. All right, so some funny things about Dad. This is the roast section. My dad was known for his nachos, and what you're picturing in your mind right now when you're thinking of nachos is not what Dad did. He would take each chip. Every chip had to be perfect. You could not use a broken or a chipped chip. And he would line them up symmetrically on a tray, like measuring. I swear to God, he measured the space between each chip, and then he would cut a perfectly shaped cube of cheese and push that symmetrical cube of cheese onto a symmetrically planned out dollop of refried bean. And then on top of that, he would place either one sliced olive or one sliced jalapeno. And so we called them Dad's OCD nachos, and my nieces and nephews, all of Dad's grandkids, and everyone in the family, whoever ate Dad's nachos, we have the formula. In fact, we had a nacho making contest last summer, and Dad was the judge to see who had created the most perfect nacho tray. That's ridiculous, by the way. And a favorite story, Carrie's gonna love this one. So my dad loved ferrets, and I could go down a rabbit hole on that ridiculousness, but he loved ferrets so much, and he had several ferrets, maybe a dozen through his lifetime, but he loved them so much that he would take them camping, okay? Now, I don't know about you, but I would, in a bazillion years, never take a ferret camping, but Dad, nonetheless, had this massive, custom-made, it wasn't even portable, it was their actual, like, mansion, the ferret mansion, and he would take it with he and my mom when they would go camping, okay? Ridiculous, again. And he would tell us that the ferrets were so happy, and the ferrets were digging in the dirt and having the best time, and he would say that the ferrets have they've created elaborate networks of mazes in the dirt. So what we're picturing in our mind is like these underground tunnels, complexly built, you know, with intersections and all this underground. Well, I don't have it here today, but Carrie sent me a picture the other day of the elaborate network of mazes, and it would even be generous to say that it was like a little pit in the dirt. It like maybe had dug down an inch. So we've gotten a kick out of these elaborate networks of mazes for years. So that's one of my dad's silly stories. More on the roasting. One time we were sitting there at dinner, and Dad comes in a little late from work, and Dad is covered in white. I mean, it looks like someone had taken white spray paint and coated his body, and you could see his eyes, and he had done this to his glasses, and we are cracking our asses up, and we're like, Dad, what the fuck? I probably didn't say fuck then because I was younger and I still had manners, but he was driving at the time this white Bronco that we called his O.J. Simpson Bronco. It was like a work-issued Bronco, and his fire extinguisher was rolling around in the back, and the pin had gotten caught on something, and so he's driving along home from work, and the fire extinguisher just deploys, and he, like, hearing him retell this story, you know, he's instantly, everything's white, he can't see anything, but he's driving, so he's desperately swiping the windshield and pulls off to the side and cleans his glasses. So that was a funny, that was a classic dad mishap. Another thing that he was really famous for was his constant photography and creating slideshows that every year we'd sit down as a formal, family slideshow evening and watch our adventures from that year or the year before. Even as recent as last summer, he had prepared this really amazing slideshow of family vacations from the 80s and maybe even 90s, but he was really, really into creating memories in our adventures. And our favorite photographs and moments where when Dad would he'd set the timer on the camera and then sprint to get in the camera. So we have photos of Dad's ass as he's like running to get in the frame. There are some of those bloopers that we still include in our family slideshows. Let's see. Dad loved his glazed donuts, and a show of hands, even if no one can see you, if you know what Dad's love of glazed donuts was all about. I can't go into more detail because that violates even my comfort zone, which takes a whole lot, but use your imagination. He loved his glazed donuts, and a lot of the photos you're going to see of him shortly will have glazed donuts. And that reminds me, I was supposed to be playing a slideshow right now, and I'm not, so I'm going to play it when we're done. But let's see. We have, let's see. I'll get back to the chat in a sec. All right. So things that Dad would say. These are some dadisms, so it slides into inappropriate, but you guys are going to be just fine. Dad called himself rude, crude, and socially unacceptable. True. He called Casey, his first son, monster. He called me kitten, and he called Carrie rooster. And Carrie might kill me for that, but that's fine. Let's see, what else did Dad say? When we were kids, if we were being too energetic, he would tell us, don't get fancy. And if we really crossed the line, he would tell us that we were being entirely too fancy. That was one of our favorite things. We all still use this in the family, but we encourage each other to get fancy. It's our hobby now. And he would say to his sons, if you want to waste your testosterone growing hair and big muscles, then that's your problem. He, later in life, loved to insult others with the most vulgar things that I've ever heard, usually jokingly and especially while driving. And one of those classic statements, again, I can't even feel comfortable saying what he actually said, but I'll give you a little preview. He would call terrible drivers or terrible people a pruned old whore. If you know what this is, raise your hand. Okay, I've got a lot on the chat box. Oh, there's lots of glazed donut icons coming in and thumbs up. Yep, April raised her hand. She knows. You guys are awesome. So let's see, the pruned old whores. And I love this one. Carrie reminded me that Dad would say, 6 inches? I'm not going to fold it in half for anyone. As if, I'm sorry. That's great. Okay, cheers to that. Cheers, Dad, in your dreams, buddy. Oh my God, that's too good. All right. I'm going to read a few of our chats here. There's some really fun things coming in. Let's see. All right. Louis Vanderviver, one of his quirks, under cross-examination in court, Pat says, I was surprised to find that the toilet seat was not powdered for fingerprints, except if they used white powder. Oh, Jesus, that's amazing. Yeah, true. Sounds about right what they would do over there. Deb Smith says, one time I walked in to get a verification, heard the music, and just backed out slowly. I know exactly what you're talking about, Deb. I want to say it was Snoop Dogg, but maybe even more crass than a Snoop Dogg. But I know exactly what you're talking about. Kathleen says, when Pat moved to Oregon from Arizona, he couldn't drive through California because ferrets are illegal in California. Yes, that's exactly. That's how much he loves those ridiculous animals. Let's see. Oh, I see. Okay, so Deb also said whenever something irritated him, he would blare hardcore gangster rap with all the explicit lyrics. in his office while comparing fingerprints. Yep. Yep. This is great. Dave Witzke says, Pat was an amazing dancer. I visited Pat and Bonnie in Tucson, and we would go to their favorite country western bar where we would dance the night away. I wore out the soles of my favorite boots. That's amazing. I love that. Yeah, he got us into country dancing. Casey had already gone to college, but I would go with Mom and Dad to country line dance night at the local country bar. They had a family night on Sundays, and he loved it so much. He told me later in life that those were some of his best memories, were going out country dancing with his family, and that's really neat. I'm glad, David, that you got to experience that. All right, let's see. Where else do we go from here? I'm going to trade hats, actually. So, hat here, but I am going to put on my country western hat that Dad bought me when I was 16. He bought me a black rabbit fur Stetson, and it's right here. And we would wear this. This is one of those hats that I would go country line dancing, and Dad would teach me all the couples dances. So if you know country line dancing, there's like a genre where you have a partner and you do the line dance together. It's really wonderful. So how do you summarize the life of a giant? I have a little bit more to read, but I want to try to also play some photos. So I'm going to look at my IT person right here. IT person, Chris, are you on IT? I am going to try to do this so that there's a slideshow playing while I'm talking. So again, I'm learning this all in real time right now, so bear with me. Can I get a thumbs up if you see the slideshow and can still hear me on your side, Chris? Let me know when you see it. We're good? Okay. Slideshow's playing, sound is on. We're good? Thank you. Okay, awesome. I have the best IT guy ever. All right. So, while that plays, I'm going to talk a little bit more. So, how do you summarize the life of a giant? A man whose character, ethics, passion, and heart were larger than life. I'm not sure you really can, but today we did our best. As I held his hand during his last week of life, with my brother Carrie and Dad's sweetheart Bobby and his brother Paul all by his side, we had Casey on the phone talking to Dad. Casey's voice, when Dad heard it, would make his heart rate speed up and his brain waves go nuts. We were watching the monitors, and every time Casey would talk to Dad, even though he was in a medically induced coma, Dad's vitals would go crazy. Just seeing that connection between Casey and Dad was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. We spent a week with Dad on life support, trying to get to the bottom of his heart failure. And so it was amazing having Casey there in those moments too. Wow, this is turning sad, but please don't be sad. We're still celebrating. To focus in on that, cheers to Pat. Love you, Papa. On Dad's final breaths as well, it was clear that he loved his people fiercely. He also knew that he had left no stone unturned in his life. He was completely at peace with his journey. He was ready to close the final page of a life well lived. It's no surprise that Dad gave his life to science. His body succumbed to the clinical trial that he was proudly participating in to help save the lives of other souls who were affected by prostate cancer too. In the end, Dad died of heart failure, not the damn cancer, and of that we know he is incredibly grateful for. We can keep Dad's legacy alive as his book comes to fruition. He was almost through the final edits of his book, and the book will cover some of the most controversial cases that he worked on in his long career. I'm helping see that book through with his co-author, Kathy Saviors. We're looking for publishers right now. I encourage you to sign up to pre-order the book on his website. The more interest shown, the more publishers are likely to grab onto it if we show that we've got support and an audience. The family would love if you would stay engaged on his LinkedIn page. If you're on LinkedIn, because we're using that platform, he has almost 2,000 followers, which it's a crazy amount of followers for an individual. But I really want to use that platform to keep his stories alive and to help promote his book, because his greatest wish in the world was getting those stories out there. So we've got a lot of work and to do to build up that interest for the publishers. I also encourage you to sign his guest book on his website, and there you can share a story, a memory, and after our live feed here is done, it's going to be also available on the website. If you guys popped in late or missed part of it, you can revisit it later. Let's see. What Dad would want you to do is keep living, laughing, and doing what's right in the name of justice and ethics and in love. Keep living the way that he showed us all how. Most of all, he would want us to laugh at ourselves. He would want us to be entirely too fancy. As we come to a close here in a little bit, we're going to watch some more of these photos from Dad, and these are all more of his recent years, and just a glimpse into what he was up to in his spare time with his family and his siblings, his grandkids. After the slideshow, I'm going to play you guys a couple of songs of him singing. His guitar was like a second limb, and if you were lucky enough to hear him sing in person, you'll know exactly what I mean. He would write a special song at the end of his training courses, and he would perform a little silly fingerprint ditty song for his students. And if you're on here, I would love if you'd raise your hand or like drop a chat if you ever heard one of Dad's songs, and definite bonus points if you recorded one. I would love to see one. You can use the email on my father's website to send anything you have, because I receive all those emails, so the family would love anything, any memories you have that you can send that way or share. But Dad didn't just play the music, he really felt it, and he shared it like a gift. He wrote many songs throughout his lifetime, and I have a book about this thick of songs that he would sit down and listen to a song, and he would write down the notes. He could pick out the notes, and then he would write the lyrics out old school. I have all the songs I've got transcribed by him are oldies, I would guess 50s, 60s songs, and he had typed them out on a typewriter. So I have his original songbook. So please keep enjoying this. There's a little bit more left of this slideshow, and the slideshow's done. Awesome. The slideshow's done. So let's watch we're going to watch the next couple songs together, and that will be the end of our celebration. Let's help his legacy live on. Thanks for being part of his journey. So stay on the screen and you'll hear a couple beautiful things he's saying. I appreciate you being part of Pat's journey. He was a one of a kind. So cheers to Pat. Let's give him the bird of the day in heaven. Thank you, everyone. I did it.
The girl of my dreams doesn't dream of me. She says we're just friends. That's all we can be. She lives in my heart since first I gazed her eyes. When I speak of love, she turns away and sighs. I close my eyes at night.
Let's turn it up here. Where's my volume?
April's flower bloom.
I think so.
Her scent fills the air. fills the room, warmth of her smile, whispered I love you. I gently kiss her lips, and all my dreams come true. Da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da. I lock these dreams inside. I dare not speak my heart. I hide my crying eyes. I play the carefree part. But unrequited love is much worse than it seems. 'Cause morning always comes and shatters all my dreams. But still I have hope. Tonight again I'll dream. Well, I grew up wild and free, walking these fields in my bare feet. There wasn't no place I couldn't go with a 22 rifle and a fishing pole. Well, I live in the city, but I don't fit in. You know, it's a pity the shape I'm in. But I got no home and I got no choice. Lord have mercy on a country boy. When I was young, I remember well, I'd hunt the gray squirrel and the cottontail. The river was clear and deep back then. I had fishing lines tied to the cypress limb. Now I live in the city, but I don't fit in. You know, it's a pity the shape I'm in. But I got no home and I got no choice. Lord have mercy on a country boy. Well, they dammed the river and they dammed the stream. They cut down the cypress and the live oak tree. There's a laundromat and a barber shop, and now the whole meadow is a parking lot. And I live in the city where I don't fit in. You know, it's a pity the shape I'm in. But I got no home and I got no choice. Lord have mercy on a country boy. Lord have mercy on a country girl.